open the door, so I opened the floor. Jenny, I think you have a question.
Hi, and thank you for your presentation. It was brilliant to have this overview. I was wondering what happened to the ADNIB activities after March 2020 because of the lockdown restrictions.
Okay, that's a great question. So obviously we had to think very creatively to see how we could continue to support our families and our children. So after March, we put our heads together and we talked very strongly to the principals. And what we did was we put together packs for each child, which had collections of activities within the pack, and through the schools were able to deliver those to the children. Insofar as possible, we kept contact with the adults through the phone, ringing different adults. We also worked with the schools and created a summer course where every week there would be like somebody doing an art activity. The parents at home were and the children at home did that art activity, and then they sent it into the school, you know, via WhatsApp or something, and there was a competition and there was a celebration of the art materials. So we worked very hard this summer because we were actually very sad because the previous summer, as you saw, we had done a lot of trips with the families and the children, and we knew how much they loved them, we knew how much we loved them. And we couldn't do them, so we had to find creative ways. As I said, we weren't successful in the funding bid to the AMIF to develop ADNIB, but the funder who gave us the 100,000 in order to make a pitch for the 300,000 allowed us, so we were able to keep on the project leader, and she has been doing some work with the schools. But it is very different because we can't have groups of parents in the school at the moment, but we're finding creative ways. One of the things we were able to do is we were successful in a bid to raise some money to buy some technology, so that we are able to provide families with like an iPad, and we are organising training for those IT training for those parents.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
But it is a challenge, and it is a worry.
Yes, of course.
Okay, there's just one question in the chat, but both Anne and myself can answer this. Marianne asked a question, why are there non-DEIS schools as well? I mean, why aren't all schools transformed in this way if it's clearly the way to go, which I'm completely convinced about? And I suppose you and I, Anne, would agree that these are schools, though, I mean, not all parents have the same level of need, and I suppose now I don't know the exact financial outlays, but to run a DEIS school is a lot more expensive than to run a non-DEIS school. The government pay that there's a capitation. The grant that DEIS schools get is more significant than a non-DEIS school, and it's trying to allocate resources and finances to those schools, so they would be very well resourced. And also yesterday Tiernan and Tracy mentioned about the lower pupil teacher ratio. They'd have a lot more initiatives as well. And I don't know if you want to, it's not even to even out, it's to create equality of condition, to try and attempt to create equality of condition where these children can even begin to compete at any sort of level of an even playing pitch. It's around equity, really.
Yeah, I think you captured it very well, Angie. It absolutely is around equity. I think that it's really important that these schools are resourced in that way, because the children would, and I don't want to stereotype, but the children do come from backgrounds where there are less resources. For example, I think I'm going to just get rid of my PowerPoint because it might. That's better. Can actually see people.
Yes.
So I see there are children. I come from a DEIS background myself. I grew up in one of those estates, and I would have gone to a DEIS school, even though it wouldn't have been a designated DEIS school all those years ago. But it is a DEIS school now. So that's my background for primary school and secondary school. And I believe that these schools and these communities have to have these extra supports. And I'll give very simple examples. So that if you have a child coming from a background where parents are more educated and have more resources, and if their child needs additional support, so they will go and get occupational therapy or speech and language therapy or music lessons or horse riding lessons, whatever it is, or they'll know somebody who knows somebody, they have networks.
Yeah.
Whereas children in this context typically wouldn't have that. So the other piece is the communities within which the children grow. And I come from one of those communities, and I would be the first to say I'm proud of the community that I come from, and I experienced a lot of love and support and care. However, the prevalence of drugs within some of these communities and of challenges within some communities is far greater than in other communities. So, and therefore, as I refer to the City Connects project that we're involved with in Dublin, and that's comes out of Boston College, like that really recognizes that so much of what affects a child's outcome in school is even outside the school gates. So it's within the community or a family setting that some of the issues that, if you like, mitigate against a child achieving their potential are outside of the gates, and that's why that project was set up, to reach out into those community supports. And one of the things the DEIS school does in recognising that is it has a homeschool community liaison scheme, and that scheme reaches into families and supports parents. And I would know over the years that I've seen that scheme in operation, it really encourages parents it honours parents, respects parents, and sees them as the first educators of their children, and works very strongly to support them to build their own skills and capacities to help their children. It's not a lack of care. It's not a lack of sometimes it is a lack of knowledge. Like, my parents left school when they were 12 years old, so they didn't experience secondary school, never mind college. So we have, now we have children staying, from DEIS context, staying in school longer. As Angie said earlier, the statistics have improved. They are, there are more of them doing Leave and Start than there has been in the past. There is a less of a dropout rate in the past, but it isn't an even playing pitch at the start, and it isn't an even outcome at the end either, because the factors that influence a child's achievements in schools are complex.
Yeah, and the other thing as well, and that we should mention as well, is that in Ireland, schools are funded, but generally all schools have to raise money themselves.
Yeah.
And a non-DEIS school have huge resources, parental, what they call voluntary contributions. So there's a taken for granted assumption that parents will give a voluntary contribution. In a DEIS school, you cannot rely on that. We don't have voluntary contributions to the same degree. So so that's why they need the more dedicated funding and resources. But that's very good. Alenka, I think you wanted to ask a question.
You have already answered.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Just what a DEIS meant. Yeah, there's one actually, Anne, for you. I would be more interested in the management model. Is it possible to ask about the structure, initiator, financier, decision makers, and their cooperation? So I suppose it's at the management level.
And I'm wondering, is that management level for the TED project, or is it for, say, the ADNIB project they're interested in?
I just see who answered this. Actually, Marianne, it was you that asked this.
So I'll talk about both, maybe, Angie.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of how TED is managed, the TED project sits within the Curriculum Development Unit. Within Mary Immaculate College, we have the director of the Curriculum Development Unit. We have a chair to the TED Steering Committee. We have membership of the TED Steering Committee from both the arts and education faculty. There are two people, myself as the coordinator and Ruth Burke, employed by the college as academic staff members to run the TED project. And then when we develop new projects, we would bring in different staff. So an example of the management for the ADNIB project, Embracing Diversity, Nurturing Integration project, would be that we realised the need was there for it. We set up a project management committee, and the project management committee had the 5 principals from the 5 participating schools, and it had the representatives from the Department of Education, the Limerick and Clare Education and Training Board, TUSLA Education Welfare Services, Limerick Education Centre, and one more that will come to me in a minute now. And those 5 organisations, 5 principals and ourselves were the project management team, but I would have been reporting back to my steering committee within the college about that. And then within each school, there was a school integration committee, and that could have a teacher, a principal, it might be children, there would be parents, a public health nurse. So each school designed its own decided on its own membership.
That's very good. Thanks, Anne. Now they've asked a question just about general operation of school board management, but Anne, I'll write this here in the chat function. It's more the operational side. I suppose, Anne, from your perspective of working in TED over the 20 years, what are the main challenges facing DEIS schools today that maybe are different to before? Are they similar sort of challenges? You know, are we still looking at the same sort of challenges?
Okay, I suppose the challenges the challenges that are facing DEIS schools at the moment, I suppose, that are facing Irish society, COVID is the most obvious one this minute. And the difference, you know, our children were out of school from the 12th of March until they came back in September. So that's all schools, and, you know, it's very certainly DEIS schools, and the repercussions of that, the loss of that time to children, and, you know, to the supporting them back into school again. Homelessness is a problem in Irish society, and our children living in homeless accommodation, and the impact that has on their education. You know, that's something you would really worry about. You know, they're living in you know, various different kinds of accommodation, and the uncertainty of that for a child. You know, obviously, you know, and I'm sure it's the same in other situations. There are communities within which, you know, the drug culture it causes great sorrow and grief and pain and loss. And then, you know, within our DEIS schools, there is tremendous hope, there is tremendous energy, there is tremendous commitment, there's tremendous partnership with parents, working with parents. You know, in the work I've done, I've been so enthused by seeing the respect and the partnership and the care that is there between schools and parents to work together for their children. And that to me is a hugely exciting piece. You know, it's a very long time ago since, you know, parents came in, maybe when I, you know, once a year or twice a year for whatever for parent, you know, teacher meeting. You know, the model of homeschool liaison, bringing parents into schools, and homeschool liaison going out and visiting parents and creating opportunities for parent learning and family support, and all of that is just a hugely, for me, exciting part of the Irish education system.
Very good. Thanks, Anne. That's really interesting. Somebody has put up their hand, but for some reason I actually can't see the person's name. Oh, actually, it's Gita.
Yes, hello. I have been just listening passively, and this is my first input. Sorry, I don't know what's happening. Some kind of, maybe because I'm using the tablet, and I am also next to the computer to have it better processed. So maybe this is some kind of bad connection. Is it better?
Gita, I think sometime if you log out and come back in, it may help.
Yeah, probably. It will be better. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I'll disconnect and come back again. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any other question while we're waiting?
I would like to ask, this TED network is operational over 20 years. So is it right to say that this long tradition of this network of networks contributes to its success? That this continuous activity, long-lasting activity, contributes to this huge success of the network?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And I think that you've put your finger on something that's really important. I think that it has contributed to it. I think the fact that, you know, like if you asked me 20 years ago, would all this work have happened? It wasn't as if I suppose I had a dream that all, that lots of things were possible. But I think the success has certainly been built on the fact that trust was built through the networks and familiarity and, working together and listening. As I said, listening is a key takeaway, listening to the needs of schools. And I think that relationship over time has really made a difference. And, people have come and gone, like principals have retired over time and schools have even amalgamated, where there are less schools now because, schools have amalgamated and that, but the relationship has definitely has been critical to all of that. And my colleague Ruth, who works with me in the TED project, her PhD is based on the networks, and she'll be finished that next year. So I'm looking forward to reading that and learning from her what the networks has meant to people. But if you're asking me in terms of my experience, the networks, creating the network was the first thing we did, and that was a really great starting point, because the networks of themselves are very good in terms of, listening each year and developing each year, and responding each year, whether it's to development of new projects or bringing speakers in on particular topics or listening carefully to what's going on. But they're also great as a sounding board for understanding what's happening and ways in which we could develop. The networks have been critical. We call them the seed bed. So they're the seed bed for lots of initiatives. We don't dream up initiatives. The initiatives come from the ground up. And that trust and conversation, that we call to schools and have, informal conversations with the principal, or, listen to what staff's needs are or whatever. And that's, we bring those ideas back to the steering committee who listen, and we see what's possible, and I suppose we've learned as it's developed, we've learned over time and how in ways in which we can respond, and over time to be able to reach into Mary Immaculate College, into the expertise in terms of the academics, but also the expertise in terms of, the financial supports and structures that are there, and the Research and Graduate School and the Curriculum Development Unit and the Education Office and the leadership of the Dean and the President, and people who are really, really committed to the development. So it's, I suppose, we're able to reach into the college and harness the supports that are there, and we're able to reach out and listen. And I suppose that's the recipe for me, is to be able to listen and to be able to respond, because the earlier question was very good. Are things the same as they were years ago? And mental health issues and are very big, in society in general. Homelessness, all those issues. It's important for us to listen. We don't have a magic wand to change homelessness, but we can understand the impact of that on a child's life, and support teachers in different ways, like by providing teachers, for example, with training and things like that.
Okay, that's very good. it is interesting, isn't it, Anne? That whole area of the importance of having support at college level.
Yeah, I think it's critical. You know, it's critical because before I came to Mary, I worked in a school, as I said, and I ran a community project within the school. You know, so for 30 years, even when I came to Mary, I continued to run on this project. So within the school, I ran morning and evening classes for adults. I had an after school program, lots of different things. And, you know, it was on a small scale, but to be able to go to Mary to bring some of those ideas, to have the support, to be able to go out and to listen. And, you know, I was pushing an open door, to be quite honest. You know, Mary Immaculate College commitment to social justice and commitment to making a difference in children's lives, you know, goes all the way through.
Yeah. It's foundation, really, isn't it? Yeah.
It's foundation. For me, nobody's ever said no, you know, and that's, you know, the maintenance men who are setting up the goalposts for the children to do the League of Legends tournament, like they are just so committed and so good. And, you know, people who are doing administrative support, people who might go out and do give a workshop in a school, you know, all the way through the college in the various areas, we've reached into them. And it's a whole college initiative in so many ways, you know. And I really appreciate that, because the scaffolding is there to support us to go out and listen to what the needs are and come back in with proposals or ideas or, you know, yeah.
There's another question here, Anne. It just says, the deaf schools are taking the lead in support. What is the relationship with child protection, child care services? But they're very in deaf schools. Well, in all schools, all teachers and principals have to undertake child protection, and deaf schools would work very closely with TUSLA. And some of your management committees, you'd have TUSLA, you'd have child protection services involved, wouldn't you?
So you see, you hit the nail on the head there, Angie. Every school has a legal responsibility. Doesn't matter. Every school has legal responsibility around reporting, and teachers have training. We specifically don't. We're not involved in any child protection issues or anything like that. That's the business of the school. So the school would have, you know, their designated protection person who would link with the services and refer children or refer information or whatever. So that would be for every school in Ireland, not any specific set of schools, but every school in Ireland.
Yeah. And I think Tiernan mentioned that yesterday. Now, there was another question, but I'll just read it out, Anne. It was more about the management of schools. And we have an interesting, I suppose, management and operation system in that the schools are owned by the community. In general, they're owned by the parish. 80% of schools in Ireland are owned by the Catholic Church. You have then other schools that are called Educate Together or community national schools, which are under the patronage. Basically, their patronage of the Minister for Education. And you have Educate Together schools that are they have this particular board themselves, but all schools have a board of management. And Anne, I think you're involved in a couple of board of managements, and so am I. But basically, all schools have to have a board of management, and you have an independent chairperson who oversees the that things are done correctly in the school. And they hold board of management meetings. You have to have 5 in the year, but you can have more. And the board of management oversees the recruitment of teachers. It also has to make sure that the school is being run appropriately. So it would scrutinize the finance, what the principal and teachers are spending on different activities. It would also, as well, this is where Anne's thing, for instance, if a school, for instance, in my school, we got involved in the ADNIB. The principal did not go off herself and decide, you know what, I'm going to get involved with this project. it was discussed at the Board of Management level. So the decisions about getting involved in projects, etc., starts there, and then the principal gets permission to get involved in different things. So the Board of Management is really crucial. And generally in a Board of Management, you have the chairperson is independent, you have the secretary is the principal, you have a teacher representative, you have members from the community, and you could have, you know, in the school that I'm involved in, one of the people that sits, and you have two parent representatives, and in most schools they like to have a mother and a father involved in the management of the school. So they oversee the day-to-day operation, financial outlays, etc. And if there are any issues related to child protection, they have to be discussed at the Board of Management level. So everything has to be recorded there. Now, the names of the children are never recorded, but we would discuss issues, you know, where they'd be, maybe we may have money left over from a particular thing, and we may decide, you know what, we have €500. Maybe we could look at providing CPD for staff, etc. So it's so the schools themselves are quite, and isn't it? They're quite independent in what they can get involved with.
Yeah.
But you do need to have a supportive Board of Management as well behind you.
The Board of Management is critical, really, and I think it's a huge. It's really supportive of principal, and you know, having been a principal myself and sat on boards of management, it's a really important structure for the school. And as Angie says, everything is recorded. And what I hadn't mentioned earlier was the TED project does sit on 2 boards of management within the city, and we also sit on 2 school completion programme initiatives, and we sit on the integration working group for Limerick City. So that's part of our partnership work as well with schools and communities, that we sit on very specific initiatives. But the Board of Management of a school plays a hugely important role. You know, say even in the recruitment of teachers, the Board of Management signs off and is involved in the recruitment process for teachers and signed off. And you know, like I say, if you went into 20 schools in Ireland today, you'd meet 20, you'll see 20. They'll have evolved differently over time. And, you know, one year they might have a priority around the green flag, and another year they might have a priority around something else, you know, so that schools differ. They differ because there are different sets of teachers with different sets of children. Like, I'm very sure it's the same in your country. Schools differ in some ways from each other, but the boards of management are critically important in supporting the schools, in ensuring the welfare of the children, and in supporting the teachers to give of their best.
Okay, and this is a really it's an interesting question, but it's quite tough as well. If you would like to export, if you were to export DESH model to other countries with similar problems, what would be the key axis or topics to focus on? Just from your experience. Now, this is your experience of working, because Anne worked in in a DESH school with a lot of DESH issues.
Yeah, I think if I was to export this, I think a few different things. I think parents are critically important. I just love working with parents. In my own school, you know, I set up a community project. It was before the homeschool liaison was instigated, and started to work with parents, you know, to support them, to support their children. I think getting parents involved, offering them opportunities to get involved, finding creative ways, because if parents are working all day, you know, you have to look at ways in which it's possible to involve them. Getting parents involved, supporting the children, scaffolding the children, you know, wondering about what happens to a child at 3 o'clock when they go home, or when they go back into the community. Are there ways in which we can create enrichment programs for children, you know, in the afternoon? Music, art, dance, sport, literacy, all kinds of things. And are there ways of involving parents with those programs as well, to involve children? So working with parents is critical. Supporting teachers, providing them with professional development, resourcing schools so that they have the equipment and resources that they need. Thinking about the summer months, where children are off school for 2 months or 3 months or whatever. What are they doing during that time? In which, like, there's interesting work in the States where they've looked at the gap that's widened between children's achievements during those summer months, the summer break, when children may not necessarily be reading or may not necessarily be doing things that support their academic development. I'm not for creating summer schools where children are doing the very same thing that they're doing during the year, nor am I for over programming children, but I am for looking at creating fun learning enrichment opportunities in children's lives outside the school gate, whether it's after school or weekends or during holiday time, and supporting parents to support kids and creating that partnership between home and school. Also looking at the school and the role it can play in society is a big piece, I suppose, for me. So the school, even though it's a long time since I was teaching there, 20 years, but when I was there, we had morning and evening classes for adults. We had an after-school program for children, and it's, you know, looking at a school and what it can offer. You know, as I described in the ADNIB project now, the school is a place where, you know, people who are new to Ireland can come, they can learn English, they can get information about the community they're living in. You know, through the ADNIB project, they may be steered towards services that they are interested in. So it's a great place for the delivery of services. You know, if I had a magic wand and I was building a school, I would create schools that had, you know, lots of extra spaces so that lots of extracurricular activities could happen, but also to create spaces for services like speech and language or occupational therapy to be delivered, so that some of the structures that children need are easily accessible.
Right.
It's a very long answer.
Yeah. And just explain, you know, the Kyla school, because okay, a lot of the regeneration wasn't necessarily positively received, but you know, the amalgamation of the schools, I mean, that's exactly what you've been talking about. Would have been very our Lakela schools, that would have been very positive, you know, bringing under one campus a whole range of supports.
Exactly, that's the model for that school. And I suppose, and if you look into the States, like the full service extended schooling, that's the model whereby services are accessible. So, you know, how wonderful would it be that from preschool or even earlier, and I believe in community preschools as well. I don't believe all preschools have to be in schools, but you know, that there's an option there maybe for children to attend preschool, to go right through the school system. But if they need supports, that there are after school supports there to support them in enrichment, arts, music, gardening, dance, drama, as well as other kinds of academic supports, and that there are other supports like speech and language supports and occupational therapy supports and psychological supports that are accessible to them. Because I think, like the Lakela model or the full service extended school model, it's about accessibility. It's about creating opportunities and for children to access the supports they need when they need them in a timely manner, in an accessible way. So I just love that model.
Yeah, no, it works.
Yeah, it works. And also, I think, like, I think schools have to be respected. It is as if you fill, you know, classrooms at night with, you know, other people using them, and then, you know, so you have to be respectful in the use of the school. But like, I ran a community project in my school, you know, after I went to Mary I as well, you know, and basically the community came in and used the school at night, and we never had ever any difficulty. It's a very small school, so they actually might have an adult guitar class in a classroom, you know, and the teacher would be teaching there the following morning, and it was hugely respected. There wasn't even a pencil moved from one desk to another desk. Everything was hugely respected. People came in and did, you know, keep fit at night. They came in and did kukri classes and all different classes, all kinds of things, and the school was used as a community resource, and huge leadership was taken by the community, because I wasn't opening and closing the school at night. The community was. And I think, you know, to me that was just a great model, and it evolved as well. It evolved by listening to the needs of the community. So like, if, you know, as a starting point, for example, that project started by in the mid-80s, I had been a teacher in the school, and then in the mid-80s, I took time out to develop a community project, and it just started by a morning class working with parents to help them to help their children, as simple as how you hold a pencil, teaching children colours, numbers, to use the scissors, all kinds of fun. A 6-week program, and it lasted for 30 years because we listened to each other and we listened to what the needs were, and a whole community developed out of that. And I didn't do it. It was done in partnership with the community because they knew what they'd like, and it was about listening and the VEC listening and providing teachers. So to go back to that earlier question, where would you start? You'd start by listening, and you'd start on a small scale. Like TED project started by going out and listening to the principals and developing the networks, and then out of the networks, listening within the networks, lots of other initiatives. So that's where we started. And also, having the support of your college or your university or your institution or other statutory organisations that have responsibility around the quality of children's lives.
And the funding to back it up as well.
And the funding to back it up as well.
Yeah.
To do the research. So as you're going to research and to learn from what you're doing and to inform what you're doing. Research is and I suppose that's one of the things that we can bring, is that research arm, which is critically important.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, is Gita back? Okay, there's one other question from Barbara, and now I'm not sure if this is our students in Mary I, but you mentioned that pupils, students are also members of some bodies inside schools. Can you tell us more about that? Pupils, cooperation, participation, are they volunteers? What is their role? I assume that's the DICE and DESH students.
No, I think maybe they're referring to the school integration committees.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, because one of the 5 schools actually had their I think 5th and 6th class. So those children would be, at the end of the primary school, they'd be 11 and 12. They had some of their children on the committees, and some of the children within that school, took leadership around creating an intercultural day, and did the PR for it and talked to their fellow students around it, and brought their ideas to the school integration committee.
Okay. Is that okay, Barbara? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
Was what I meant. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm just conscious that Gita was yeah, this is one that Marianne, this is the dilemma. While test results in reading and maths among primary level students in urban DESH schools have improved on each round of testing between 2007 and 16, their achievements are still well below the national norm. And that is, going back to our argument why there can be no let up in DESH schools, because the advantages we're trying to, Anne's TED is trying to maybe address some of the advantages that children in more middle class schools have. They can go out and buy send their children to structured activities in the evening time, but our DESH children don't. Yeah, that is one of the, I don't know if you would like to talk, Anne, about it. Just it's so hard to, that requires a more structural, I think, response as well in society around what we value, and trying to level the playing pitch.
Yeah, and I think we're talking about what you talked about earlier also, Angie. We're talking about equality and creating equality of opportunity, because that's what DESH is about, really, and putting supports in place so that the children have their rights, really. And within a DESH context, as I said, there are huge commitments from parents, from teachers, to make a difference in children's lives. I see this fabulous partnership over my time of teaching and working within and for the DEIS context, which is 40 years now. I've seen this incredible partnership grow and respect grow among parents and teachers and the homeschool liaison, as I said, and school leadership and school ethos and a passion to make a difference in children's lives, is fueling, a lot of this. And the school completion program offers those children, specific children that are targeted for that. That offers children opportunities, for those kinds of enrichment supports and scaffolding that's there. So, we don't live in an equal world, and some children have more, they're born to have more maybe material advantages, not necessarily more love. So because I don't like our communities to be painted in a way that's negative, there is so much positive about communities that I work with and work for and have lived in, where there is so much care and positivity and community spirit and neighbourliness and support. That's all. But they do, in order to thrive and flourish, it's important that supports are put in place for families and for children, so that they have rightly got their claim their place at their, our children. You're saying that the test results have come up, but at the same time there is still inequality. There is, and it's a complex, it's a great question, but it's very complex because, as I said, the resources that are within communities and families differ in different contexts. The challenges that are there, to parenting, in particular contexts are greater than in other contexts, for example. So it's around creating those supports, celebrating what's positive and building on it and respecting what's there. And I think, a huge amount has been achieved. And, certainly the principals I work with are passionate to make a difference and to level that playing pitch and to give their children equal and wonderful chances, and to see them flourish. So that, I think that, there was an earlier question around where you'd start, and I think, you can't replace the passion and the commitment to the children, and I see that in the schools I work with. Obviously, I'm so privileged with the people I work with. I just see that level of care. I mean, you met it in Tracy and Tiernan yesterday. They just go the distance for their kids.
Yeah. No, certainly, I think in relation to that, we've done a lot of surveys on parental expectations for their children, and there's very little difference in the aspirations of parents, in DEIS areas, non-DEIS areas. It's just that the knowledge, the social networks and the cultural capital and the social capital that they have to utilize resources to get their children ahead, I think that's where the inequality is. And that requires a societal response as well around, the broader things that's outside of even education, around taxation, etc.
And like, if you're worried about homelessness, for example, if you're in that kind of a situation, the kinds of stress that's in a family must be enormous. Like there are families, our families living, in different kinds of conditions. So we have to understand the child in that context. So, like the statistics in Ireland around homelessness have been very disturbing, and the numbers of children that have living with that instability disturbing over the past few years. There is a commitment to make a difference, and I hope that changes sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and there's just one question here from Vladka. I strongly agree that parents are the first educators and that they are very important. I'm impressed by the fact how much importance and value you give to parents. I'm just wondering, do all teachers, or at least the majority of teachers, feel the same way and give the same amount of significance to parents?
I don't know if I know the answer. I can only speak from my experience of working with teachers and working with the principals over time, and my feeling is they absolutely do respect and understand that the parents are critical in a child's life. You know, I think I don't know what Tracy and Tiernan talked about yesterday, but you know, certainly within their schools and the schools I work with, I think it's the importance of parents is understood. Like I would know principals who stand at the gate in the morning when the children are coming to school and when the children are going from school, so that they meet the parents and talk to them. So, you know, you might have, for example, the formal you know, classes for parents or whatever, but you've an awful lot of informal work that goes on as well. That welcome of standing at the school gate, I would know lots of parents and principals who speak to each other on a first name basis, and I think that to me, you know, is a wonderful thing. So that, you know, if there is a problem with a child, or if the teacher is worried about a child, when you have that relationship with the parent is coming up already knowing there's a welcome for them in the school. You know, because if some parents have had, and some parents have had a negative experience of school themselves, you know, it's so important that their experience of a parent relation, their relationship with the school as a parent is positive, and they may have had a negative experience, but the people I know certainly would be working very hard to make sure that the parents have a positive experience when they come to the school. And I know having, from my own research, having classes in the school, having parents in the school regularly, it helps parents and teachers when might be a difficult issue to be discussed. You know, if for example, if there's a behavioural issue, or if for example a teacher thinks a child needs a particular assessment, you know, if they have a relationship with the parent already, or if the principal has a relationship with the parent, it makes it so much easier if there's something that needs to be discussed. And also in terms of building aspirations and aspirations that a parent has and working closely. So that informal piece of literally meeting somebody in the gate at the gate in the morning, at Christmas shows, at parents coming in and out for classes, you know, that relationship piece is hugely important, and that's where the trust grows.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anne. Unless anybody has any other question, I think we can. And this is a lovely question, or a lovely comment, and it probably sums up what I was going to say anyway. It's so inspiring to see how devoted Anne and the rest of you is. Thanks so much.
Oh, that's
well,
lovely.
It's you, Anne, because you drive it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have a lot.
We're only trailing behind you, but anyway.
No, I have a lot of support. We've a great team.
Yeah, and it's important. Like Ruth would be fabulous as well. Your project worker, yeah.
Absolutely. Like Ruth has worked with me developing the networks, and she facilitates some of them now. And as I said, her PhD is on the network, so I'm really looking forward to reading that next year. And Anya Line, who leads the ADNIB project, you know, she's been fantastic. And over the years, you know, we've had just great workers. So, you know, I do play a part, but only a part. You know, I'm part of a team, and you know, I've just have had amazing people to work with in the ADNIB team. You know, Sandra Power and Margaret Murphy and Anya were fantastic. Ruth's fantastic. So there's been just great. You know, Fiona is leading the Teal project. You know, over time we've just been very lucky to get the right people in the right position to do, you know, to do what's required with empathy and respect and a commitment and a passion to make a difference in children's lives, because it's really all about children, you know.
Yeah. And I think, Anne, as well, one of the things that has always struck me about any of the involvement I've been with TED is that meetings are. I mean, we are discussing quite difficult and what they can be quite depressing subject areas, but there's always elements of fun involved. You know, when principals come together, there's a lot more laughing and cooperation than there are, you know, what's called gnashing of teeth.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's testament to TED as well. Anyway, and I don't want to take up any more of your time. I suppose on behalf of the partners, just to thank you so much and for the time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for all your questions and for listening to me, and thanks to Angie for inviting me and for her contribution to TED, which she's underplaying over time.
I'm not.
She is.
And I'm not.
She's been hugely supportive over time, and it's, you know, it's a privilege. I always say it's my privilege to do this work. I work with amazing people in Mary I and in schools, and you know, and it's great because it's a motivational factor. If the people you're working with have that commitment, it you know, because sometimes the things we're dealing with are, you know, when you hear people talk about their worries about the impact of COVID or the impact of homelessness or the impact of that are going on in the community, or worried about mental health issues or whatever, a team of people they don't want to just talk about it, they want to contribute to making a difference, then that's the difference.
No, I think that sums it up. And I leave the last word to Irma, who said that thank you very much for a very interesting presentation.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. And good luck with the rest
Thanks,
of the work.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.